Hi, everyone. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I'm the Associate Director of Regional Programs for the Office of Alumni Relations at USD. I'm also a proud member of the class of 2015. We are happy to have you for today's Chicago Torero Club event, Wedding 101 During a Pandemic, featuring Amanda Secore, class of 2009, owner and founder of Inspire Your Weddings and Events. Before we begin today's session, I would be remiss if I did not address the challenges we have all faced this past year. However, through all of the hardships and uncertainty, our Torero community has been empathetic and resilient. For those who have tuned in live, and for those who will be watching at a later time, we hope you are doing well and are pleased that you have taken the time to join us for this informational USD alumni event. During our time at home, the Alumni Association staff is continuing our efforts to keep alumni engaged with and connected to the university, in addition to providing virtual events that are of the most need to our alumni, allowing them to learn something new and sometimes to take a break and have some fun. These events include our Alumni and Alumni Business Spotlight series, as well as various informational and interactive sessions led by alumni who are experts in their fields. Last but not least, the Alumni Association is excited to announce that Hire USD is back. This campaign is an effort from the Alumni Association and the Career Development Center to build awareness about the importance of toreros hiring toreros. If you or your company have a position open, consider USD first. For more information on everything I listed above, please visit our website at alumni.sandiego.edu. All right, so we'll begin today's session with the Q&A between Amanda and myself, and then we will move on to audience Q&A. So please feel free to put any questions that you have for Amanda in the Q&A feature. We'll get to it. I'd like to introduce today's featured guest, Amanda Secore. Amanda is from the class of 2009 and graduated from the School of Business and Event Management program. As a full-time planner of Inspire Your, a premier wedding and event company located in Midwest, Illinois, she seeks to change the wedding industry with the clarity of options in her products and services. Having started her 10-plus year career at the University of San Diego, working for both the Hospitality and University Advancement Department, she founded her business in the beginning of 2019 with the rooted values for the brand of dedication, hospitality, ownership, and teamwork. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Megan.
It's so good to see you.
So good to see you and be back with the USD community. Kind of missed it after all those years.
For those who don't know, I mentioned above, Amanda has been a part of USD for 10 plus years, but we had the pleasure of working together not during our time. I used to work over in athletics, so we worked side by side when she worked in events, working on athletics events, and then I made my switch over to alumni relations. So a former coworker and now, of course, a friend. So it's good to see you.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, and I hope that I can add some valuable information to newly engaged couples, to couples that are planning right now, or anyone that's a guest of a wedding during this difficult time with the pandemic. So,
perfect. Well, tell us about Inspire Your and how it came to be.
Yeah, so like Megan had mentioned, I spent 10 years in hospitality services, kind of growing through the sales side, the operational side, the fundraising, and always did kind of wedding coordination on the side there in San Diego and just loved it. Loved being a part of people's wedding day and obviously love putting together events. So I decided back in 2019 that I wanted to go off on my own and start this company and do it in a more innovative way that potentially could grow into something that might be more scalable by reaching other markets than just the market that I'm in. So I moved out to the Midwest and packed up my apartment downtown San Diego and decided to kind of try a different market that I felt was somewhat undersaturated and needed some more professionalism when it came to wedding coordination. And so I started my Inspire Your business there in Central Illinois.
And talk to us a little bit more about Inspire Your. What are the kind of products that you offer, the services that you, relay to your clients and things like that? Because I know that you have a really, really great web, presence. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So one thing that I noticed when I was doing weddings and events in San Diego is that a lot of couples were deviating from the need of wanting a full service planner to just wanting a day of coordinator or someone to simply put together the framework of their day, which is the timeline, the reception task list, all of those kind of details only really someone who's been in the industry and that has done weddings for a long time would know. So with my business, we kind of innovated the way that we offer planning products as well as services to couples. And so we broke our services down into design, framework, and coordination. So you can simply, just have me jump on board and help you with your wedding design. And then if you're someone that is confident and knows a lot about how to manage vendors and kind of take control, then you can finish the wedding day on your own. But then if you're someone that needs more guidance and kind of more of a support system, then we have our framework guide, which I will work with you to put together the whole overview of your day. And then finally, which a lot of couples now are reaching out for, is the day of coordination. With so much of the stress of a traditional wedding already that exists, and now with the idea of the pandemic and with COVID and more guidelines, a lot more couples are wanting to have someone there that day to execute the day in an insightful and skillful way, who's mindful of kind of all of the different health and wellness protocols. So those are the three services we offer. And fortunately, a lot of couples have done all three with me. And those that, don't need the full service, then I love being a part of their wedding day doing the coronation part.
That's awesome. I think it's so great how customizable your services are and really tailor and fit the needs of your customers. So that's wonderful to see. But you mentioned, speaking of COVID, a lot of people
Yes.
have been contacting you about day of coordination, making sure that they are crossing their T's, dotting their I's, and making sure that everything and everyone is safe for their weddings. So we've obviously learned to operate in a new way since COVID-19. We've been told to social distance, wear masks, limit our travel, and of course, limit our attendance at big gatherings. So because of all of this transition, can you tell us how Inspire Your has transitioned due to the pandemic?
Yes. So one of the big things, obviously, I kind of started the business being more of an executioner, being the one that's out there, executing the couple's wedding days. And through the pandemic, I realized that I needed to transition my kind of business offerings for my couples to be more knowledge based and really educate myself as an expert in the field and read articles and contact our local health district and figure out what the protocols were for every phase. In Illinois, we were done by phases. So we're in phase 4 now. But that was kind of the main pivot that I made was one, reaching out to all of my couples, regardless of whether you were, just did one of my services, did all of my services, reaching out to them. One thing I noticed that a lot of couples, I would send them an email and just want to check in and provide them with my COVID-19 wedding planning guide, which I do have available on my website. And it's available for anyone that's planning a wedding, not just for Midwest couples. But I, reached out to them and I noticed a lot of couples did not respond back. And so then I just started calling couples. And once we, picked up the phone and started chatting, if it was much more of like a wall was broken down. I think a lot of couples feel this pressure of needing to have answers and know what they're doing, but everything is so, we're kind of taking it weeks and months at a time. And so, just having a very authentic and genuine conversation with them and helping them navigate, different vendor options, or should I change my date, or should I reschedule, or, what do I do? Kind of is where I started being more of that knowledgeable mentor. Which made it more fun for me because I got to get to know my couples better and get to learn more about their lifestyle and their journey, which is what I love about being a wedding planner. So it really broke down that barrier. And like I mentioned, I came up with that COVID-19 wedding guide and really try to help guide couples of the 4 steps to take when you're thinking about either postponing your wedding day or rescheduling it. And so it kind of outlines the steps to take in that conversation as you navigate that, and then kind of then tells you, okay, once you've made your decision, then this is now the next step of how you can reimagine your day. So it's been quite the journey for myself and many vendors as well. But I think that we've managed to help a lot of couples through this time.
Amanda, can you give us a little, like a quick snapshot of those 4 steps that you
Yeah.
talked to couples about?
So I printed off the guide because I'm a planner, so that's what I do. So the 4 steps that I have been telling our couples is, 1, to pick your wedding type. So traditionally, there's 4 different types of wedding types. There is the elopement, a minimony, which is now basically a mini ceremony and reception of 10 to 15 guests. A micro wedding, which is 50 guests or less, which a lot of people are familiar with, or doing your big traditional wedding. So first, just deciding, okay, what wedding type do I want to have? Okay, once you've decided that, then figuring out within your area or county and state, what are the health and guidelines, and can I execute that on the date that I had it on? And if the answer is no, I can't, then sitting down and figuring out postponement date options. And so then once you figured out your postponement date options, I know I've worked with a couple couples now that even have postponed in a year and a half away. But once you figured out that date, then reaching out to your wedding planner to start the conversation with all of your vendors on what we need to do when it comes to their availability. If you don't have a wedding planner, then I encourage couples to reach out to the kind of main priority vendor. So in a lot of cases, that's the caterer, because they're high volume and usually they can only do 1 or 2 weddings, a weekend. So reach out to your vendor teams, check their availability, and then if vendors aren't available, then research other vendors that are. And then finally, once you've kind of gone through those 3 steps, then sit back and update your timeline and your checklist of, now what do I need to do if, now I thought I only had 2 months, but now we postponed it, we have another year. So now let's reevaluate our timeline and our budget and our checklist. So those are kind of the 4 simple, but not simple steps that couples can take.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing. Well,
Yeah.
that leads us nicely into the next question that I have for you, where we all know that weddings have a long-standing tradition of proper etiquette for everyone involved in the big day. So it's not just the bride and groom or the family, maybe even the wedding party, but guests also. There's a lot of different things that I think are constantly changing that people need to know about weddings. And I think even though that there's the vaccine rollout and things, the end is in sight, there are still going to be things that are, probably going to be forever changed because of this. So I would like for you to walk us through how these etiquettes have changed in the pandemic world. So we'll start with the bride and groom. You mentioned the 4 steps, but is there more to know?
Yeah. So one thing I always kind of have let my bride and grooms know, because some of them have moved from venues that are in town and very restricted by the regulations by the county, and then some have gone off to private properties. And so they have a little more leniency. And so the one thing though that I think is here to change is just that reminder that the couple's really the host of their wedding day. And not only are they the host to obviously their family and their friends, but also the vendors. And so I think just kind of reminding them that this is really, you're kind of at the helm of being able to make the decisions for how your family are interacting in your day, but also what your guest experience is, how the safety and wellness of your vendors. So that's kind of one thing that I think is here to change, is just that reminder that, you're hosting this day as a celebration of your unity and love. And there's a lot more things I think that couples weren't really aware of before that I think are more top of mind when it comes to just who's a part of that day with you.
All right, let's talk about the etiquettes and the expectations for the mother of the bride or groom and father and family.
So I think just with the immediate family, when planning a wedding, the expectations, especially now, is this that the couples are going through so much, and there's so many different emotions and feelings that they're experiencing. So I think the best thing that we can do for each other is just to give grace to one another. That's kind of been the mantra for last year for all of our wedding vendors, as well as just giving each other grace. A lot of us have had to change our business models and pivot and change the way we communicate with couples, and so have couples with their families, and it's been a very stressful and emotional time. So I think just being more of a support system and remembering why we're getting married and what the day is really to be about. And so I would say that would be more the kind of more emotional and more secondary support is what kind of the parents can give to the couple. And just kind of be there as a cheerleader as everyone continues to pivot.
Great. What about members of the wedding party?
It's actually kind of, Kara and Megan and I were talking about this earlier, but I'm actually in San Diego attending a guest. Attending one of my best friend's wedding as a bridesmaid. So now now I'm actually going to be able to experience as a guest, which will be kind of unique and someone in the wedding party. But I think it's just the same thing. I think, for myself, I've tried to go a little bit above and beyond as a bridesmaid and trying to find a way that I can make this weekend memorable for the couple. And, we can't go out to dinner and do that typical rehearsal dinner like usual. We can't, just order in room dining and have a girls' night in the room. So, you kind of have to be a little bit more proactive in your thinking versus just showing up as the bridesmaid or groomsman at the hotel and like anything you want can just happen. Well, that's not the case. And so just being more proactive and trying to think about, okay, well, like what is our meals going to look like? If we're all going to be in the room together, then, how do I decorate it? Or how do I make it special? Or, you have to think more about logistics than you did before. Even like myself, I'm up in this like top tower way away from the middle of the property. So now I'm just like, well, how do I even get anywhere? How do we all connect? So I think logistics is something that we have to think about and just be more proactive as members of the wedding party than just kind of carefree and having fun and showing up. So.
Yeah, exactly. So would you recommend for someone in the wedding party then? So everyone's kind of in the same boat trying to figure out what's going on. Would you recommend for someone who is in the wedding party? Because like you, I am to be in a wedding here soon. We don't know when it's going to be, but hopefully soon. Would you recommend if someone has some experience in taking a leadership role or maybe even some logistics and event coordinating, that someone from the wedding party, even though no one was dubbed it, maybe it might not even be
Right.
the maid of honor or the best man to take the
Right.
lead into creating something nice for the group, before the wedding and during the wedding. So things seem at least a little bit slightly back to normal.
No, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, I'm a bridesmaid, I'm not the maid of honor, but I know that the maid of honor has been right there by the bride's side and has gone through a lot as well in trying to, take on the responsibility of having to change the bachelorette weekend or change this or that. And so I do think that it is really important to have, the maid of honor traditionally is the one that kind of anchors the whole party. I'm saying with the best man, and then delegates out, okay, this is when everyone needs to show up, and this is what we're doing for the day. But I think it's also really great if one or two of the members of the party, like myself, kind of say, okay, well, I know that you've got us all coming in this day and this is your plan, but what can I do to help? Let me take the decoration side, or let me think about the logistical side. So that's just kind of the added component that we never really had to do as members of the wedding party. So I just think asking questions, making yourself available, being patient, and just being proactive in your thinking is going to be really helpful for everyone.
Great.
So,
yeah. And then finally, the last is the guest of an upcoming wedding. I think usually we all think, oh, we could just show up and have a good time. Right. But what is that like now? And what should people prepare for?
So I do actually on my COVID-19 wedding page on my website, I do have a 5x7 card that's for the wedding guest. And it's really just, it's a nice kind of statement that I put in the perspective of the couple as if they were talking to their wedding guest. And I encourage couples to put that on their website or the wedding website as a PDF for their guest to download or include that in their email communication. But as a wedding guest, I think it's you have to be, like, again, the proactiveness. I think you need to be respectful of what the health and guidelines are in your county, whether or not you think that they're appropriate for the time. It's still something that you have to remember, that you're a guest, that you're being invited by a host to attend an event or attend the wedding as a guest. And so you need to then kind of respect those boundaries of what the day is going to be like, and be more mindful, especially now, of the health and wellness protocols, and be educated a little bit on what they are. And like I said, whether you think they're appropriate or not, they're there, and you're there to make sure that you allow the couple to have a great wedding day. And so it's just a little bit more about them than it is about you enjoying it as a guest. So I think that that's kind of the little note, that we have a little bit more responsibility as a guest. So.
Great, thank you. So
Yeah.
the last question that I have for you before we go into some audience questions, because I see we have a couple that people are writing in, which is wonderful, as well as some pre-registered questions,
Mhm.
is let's take a moment to go behind the curtains, right?
Mhm.
Can you provide us some insider tips that will save some people some money when it comes to planning their perfect day? Things that people traditionally pay a lot of money for, but could probably find a cheaper option, maybe like a DIY option, or could
Right.
totally nix it from the plan altogether. I'm thinking, and I'm just going to throw things out there and you can laugh at me if you like, skipping out on the dessert table or the cake, not assigning seats at specific tables, whatever it may be.
Right. Well, I think that obviously, DIY it was started years ago and it's here to stay regardless. So there are some really great wedding resources of DIY weddings. If you go to like Style Me Pretty, Green Wedding Shoes, The Knot, Zola now is getting into the wedding business outside of a registry platform. So there's a lot of great resources out there for how to save money. But the one good thing that I always tell my couples that if you do decide to get married right now, you're already having a limited guest count. So that's already saving you so much money right there, not multiplying, $10 per table linen times 50 tables is much more expensive than timesing it by 10. So there's some added value there. But I know a lot of couples right now, just some insider tips when it comes to the bakery section, a lot of the couples are just doing a slicing cake. So just a small 2-tiered cake and then just having some mini desserts for their guest. So that kind of is a little bit of a way to save money when it comes to the wedding cake. The wedding florals is also a great way. A lot of couples are kind of putting more money into the bridal bouquet and into their wedding party arrangements and then doing something more simple when it comes to the floral centerpieces. One big trend right now is not having all the same centerpieces for all the dining tables, but doing like 3 different types. So maybe having like all candle, one's a low one, or one's a mixed one. So that's a very big trend right now with being able to kind of mix and match your decor. And then when it comes to catering, I think too, couples are able to kind of save a little bit on catering by not having to have so many options like a buffet, but keeping it kind of tailored to just one starter, two sides, an entree, and then the mixed desserts. So it's just not kind of that over the top of giving your guests tons of options and selections and this big buffet. Right now, it's more important to kind of keep it more scaled down.
Great. Well, we have a lot of questions asked in the Q&A in the chat. So what I'm going to do is start there, and then
Okay.
we will fill in with some other questions that were asked during registration. So the first that I see here is from Jordan. We just got engaged and ideally would like to have a traditional wedding in San Diego. However, as we would be planning for fall of 2022, do you have advice on how best to set yourself up to proceed with planning a traditional wedding while also having a contingency plan if we need to pivot to a more micro event? And then on a lighter note, what are your favorite San Diego reception venues?
Sure. So thank you, Jordan, for the question. And that's great that you'll be hopefully able to do a traditional wedding come fall of 2022, which I do think will be manageable at that point. But I always just give the idea of go ahead and just like you would in traditional wedding planning, go ahead and find your venue, figure out your vendor team, go ahead and move in that direction. And then just be mindful when communicating with your vendors that you are aware that you may need to scale it down to a micro wedding, and you'll just be in communication with them if need be. But I always recommend that couples make that decision whether to scale down or change the type of wedding they're having no closer than 4 months before your wedding date. It just becomes way too stressful. So a few couples that were supposed to get married this May, I told them by February, make your decision whether you're going to change to a micro wedding now or change to a venue location. Don't keep it too close because then it's just too stressful and you can't just enjoy that decision and that process. So I would recommend just move forward as planned, know that there might be a contingency plan and maybe look into having kind of 2 guest list in the background in case you do have to move your wedding size down to smaller number. But it's great that you're aware that that may happen. So that's good. And then when it comes to wedding reception venues here, San Diego is just like a playground of wedding receptions. There's between the hotels and the private gardens. I'm trying to think. I used to do a lot of weddings at a private garden that was here in San Diego. I'll find the name of it and I'll send it to Megan. We did a couple weddings when I was here, and it was just a beautiful, nice private garden area. But I also love any of the hotels that are down by the bayfront. So the Hilton Bayfront, the Hyatt, the Marriott that's down there. There's an International Continental that's a new hotel that opened up more on the harbor side that's near Little Italy. So I would definitely, though, because San Diego has so many wedding reception options, figure out exactly what type of reception you want. Do you want the hotel? Do you want the indoor outdoor feeling? Do you want the more rustic, the museum? There's a contemporary art museum in San Diego, which is gorgeous. Do you want the villa feel? To try to narrow it down to what you imagine yourself getting married in, and then kind of go from there. So you're not overwhelmed.
That's great. And then to follow that up, I actually have a personal question about San Diego weddings, right? So San Diego is beautiful and you can almost get married all year round outside if you wish. But because we all think that, there might be some times where people do think, oh, maybe I'll do a December or a January wedding, which can still be achieved, I suppose, but might not be the best option. If a couple came to you and asked, and said, hey, we want to get married in December in San Diego, would you say I would recommend you either pushing it more towards November, or would you say, hey, you can pull it off, but these are all the things that you need to keep in mind based on the venue and just the time of year?
Yes, well, I mean, I think that is a blessing. Unlike the Midwest, you cannot get married any time of year. So I would still encourage that couples can get married in December. I know that the wedding I'm attending this weekend was to get married in December here in Escondido, and they had to postpone though, unfortunately. But I would just, when it comes to contingency plans, when it comes to weather, it really just depends on what the venue offers. So, sometimes we get crazy windstorms in September, October out here, and an outdoor wedding is wind is almost as worse as rain, in my opinion, and even more frustrating to deal with. But I think that the best thing you can do, since you can get married almost any time of year out here, is just always know what the venue has to offer when it comes to indoor, outdoor, and then just know that, okay, if it's mainly an outdoor wedding and we need a weather backup plan, just know some, local tent company or someone that they work with, just to have that plan B.
Great. So Victoria wrote in and said we had to postpone our wedding. Victoria, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Now we are receiving many yes RSVPs for our wedding in June. We will need to offer our ceremony virtually to try to minimize the crowd, which makes sense. Okay. What is the best app for offering the ceremony virtually? She is debating between Facebook Live or the Lovecast app. Have you ever used either one for your clients?
Yes. So we did an October wedding, and they had to do that where they had to scale down their guest size. And so we did do for that one, we did Zoom, which I would not recommend that platform. But I did do another wedding in November out of private property. It was outside, and we did Facebook Live. The only thing with Facebook Live that we came across, which I didn't realize until I happened just to peek over and make sure it was running right, was that if you're playing music that is like copyright protected or something, Facebook will all of a sudden stop the video if it's like there's not approval for that music to be able to be shared on the platform. So I had to quickly, I didn't realize it had paused it during the ceremony, and I was like, oh shoot, no, it's okay. I had to replay it once that song was done, and it was just back to them talking. So that was interesting about Facebook Live. So I'm not familiar with that other Love Connect, what was it called?
Lovecast.
I'm not familiar with that platform. I would definitely recommend that you reach out to a videographer in your area. There's so many resources of people that are experienced. So it's like, why not reach out to a videographer and ask them, even if you're not hiring them, maybe just offer to meet up for coffee and or a lunch or something and pay for it, or, just say, I'm interested in needing to stream my wedding ceremony. I don't know what platform to use. What do you recommend? One thing I did come across that when we were trying to stream is that a lot of the people on that side were messaging in like, we can't hear, we can't see. And I'm like, well, I can't really move the camera in front of the videographer that's there professionally shooting the video. So unfortunately, you're going to kind of be sent to the back a little bit. So I would practice too, maybe do a little mock-up, stage it. Or what I recommend is just hire a videographer. for your ceremony at least, and get that great content. Let them do it professionally with the audio and with the proper equipment, and then share that afterwards with your guest. Ask them to say, hey, can you please, cut this in the next 3 weeks? I love to share that with our wedding guests as a special thank you. So that's what I would really recommend, because live stuff is hard these days.
That's a great recommendation. A little story for you all. My sister did a micro wedding in August, and I, as you know, work for the Office of Alumni and Relations, and we do a lot of Zoom events. So I said, oh, I'll take on the Zoom, recording it live. It is stressful. And I was not really a bridesmaid, but kind of in the party. Very hard to explain. But I took that upon myself to do. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people were writing in, oh, Megan, we can't hear. Can you turn, fix the audio, this, that, and the other. And I would have had to completely, miss the actual wedding to try to figure that out during. And also I was holding it and recording as everyone was going. So pictures afterwards during the ceremony and through the video showed me holding my phone the whole time. So it was something we didn't think about. So as you mentioned, practice makes perfect. So, the videographer route is a great suggestion. Yeah. And also just think that there's also other elements that go into it if you are charged with being the recorder of the live event.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay. Helen wrote in and said, how do you suggest that the mask guidance be handled?
So I do have that in my safety and wellness part of the COVID-19 guide about the mask. I think that as the host of the wedding day, you need to set that expectation if that is something that is, I believe it's a federal law now. I don't know how states can implement that or county, but I would, at all of the weddings that I have planned, we've had masks available at the guest book table or whatever that first table is that guests are experiencing when they come into your ceremony or to your reception. We've had the mask available. We've encouraged guests to wear them. We have the hand sanitizer, and so I think it's also at some level, I guess, kind of more of a comfort or preference level to the couples, but I think that you definitely need to set that precedent, that it is something that we are putting forth out there, and we ask our guests to do if they feel that that's necessary. But not a lot of venues are mandating that 100%, but they are when guests are dancing or when they get out of their table. It's kind of the same thing when in the Midwest. I just remembered this, but in the Midwest, the way that they're handling the mask mandate is the same way as indoor dining. So when you're at your table, you don't have to have your mask on, but when you get up to go to the bar or to intermix with guests, then we ask that you put it on. So that's what they're expecting for weddings to do as well, is to follow the indoor dining recommendations. So that's kind of what I would strongly encourage as well for weddings, is that, when you're at your table and you're eating and dining and drinking, then you don't need to have it on, but to have it on in between, and you just kind of have to lead by example.
Great. We have one more pre-registered question directly related to COVID, and then we have some other that are just wedding questions in general. So this came in from the Partinskis, and this question is their original plan for the wedding and space for their California venue was for 150 people in October 2022. We are contingency planning. Is it better to plan for 50 or hope for the venue to allow for 100 in that contingency planning?
I think in the contingency planning, it would be whatever that next tier that you're in now would be. So in Illinois right now, I'm recommending that couples do start planning for a contingency plan of 50 if postponement and rescheduling is off the table, and you do want to get married on that day, or and so I would have your contingency, like I said, have the extra guest list of what those 50 people would like. And a great way that I always say, and wedding guests understand this, if I was invited to a wedding and I'm not maybe as close as I once was, to the couple, they're going to understand that, you have to say, unfortunately, we do have to scale down our wedding guest size. As much as we would love to share this day with you, we will, be sending you photos or a video link after the ceremony and reception so you can still be a part of it. There is some verbiage on my website as well in the COVID-19 guide under guessed of how to word that, but I would definitely do the contingency on 50 if you can't postpone your wedding day. And just
Great to
another
meet
small reminder
you.
is that, because I get a lot of pushback with couples with venues right now, is that unfortunately, the venues are being held to the expectations and standards of whatever's being dictated by the health department. And so I always have to remind couples that it's not the venue that necessarily saying you can only have 150, it's whatever the health rules are for that time. All the venues that I work with would love to be doing these big weddings and have all the guests in there, but their hands are tied to whatever expectation from the county that there is. And so just remembering that, and unfortunately, some of my couples are getting married in these kind of oversized venues for 50 people doing a micro wedding, but we're filling up the space by doing maybe more design options or spacing the tables out more and filling the space with more of experiences in order to kind of mitigate the fact that they're in this big venue and only have 50 guests. So
That's a great tip, a good reminder for everyone.
yes.
Alyssa wrote in, can you share the location of your website / page where we can find the COVID-19 wedding guide?
Sure. So my website is inspire-your.com. And right there in the header is the first tab. It says new COVID-19 weddings. So you can click on that tab and then it'll direct you down into the wedding guide that you can see kind of a sneak peek of what it is. And then you can purchase it for a small amount and I'll email it over to you and you'll have that PDF with all those resources, recommendations, tips, guidance, all of that. And then you can download the guest 5x7 card for free also on that webpage.
Great.
So,
okay, we have a couple more questions. We're almost at our time, but I think we can get a few more in. One question that came in is about the sticky relationships that you can get into with either your maid of honor or someone in your wedding party. We obviously know that it's a really happy time, but can be very stressful. So sometimes people's maid of honors end up not showing up in the way they should. This individual is saying that their maid of honor has kind of been MIA and can't even commit to their bachelorette weekend. So has been really wondering whether they should continue to move forward with including this person in their plans. How would you suggest this bride move forward with that?
Yeah. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier, as being part of the wedding party, so many of us are being affected by the pandemic in different ways, whether it's our family members that are coming down with it, or we're having to care for others, or maybe our work has been affected, our lifestyle, obviously as a small business owner, we're having to pivot and change and go in all these different directions. So I think that it's just best to just sit down and have a call with your maid of honor or your bridesmaid and just check in with each other and just to have a nice, honest conversation that, I realize that maybe there has been some things that have prohibited you from being able to kind of uphold the traditional maid of honor duties. And we're not really in a traditional wedding time right now. So, this is kind of what I'm expecting and needing from you. But I also want to, check in with you and see if you can still uphold these duties. And maybe they can't. Maybe they're overwhelmed with so many other things that they're doing during the pandemic and what they have going on that they can't do those duties, and people don't want to say that. So just I think reaching out and having that conversation, and maybe it's not the right fit for her to be your maid of honor during this non-traditional wedding planning time, and you say, well, you know what, I respect that, you have this going on. So is it okay if I ask, Rebecca, one of the bridesmaids, to fill in that role, and you just becomes one of my bridesmaid and you can just be there to enjoy the day. So I think we just have to have conversations with each other right now and realize that this isn't a traditional wedding experience for all of us. I mean, even for me, like I keep wanting to, message the bride all the time. What can I do to help you? I'm a wedding planner. What do you need? Like, here's my guides, and she's just like, I want you just to be there and just show up. And it's like, okay, but I know I can do more. So I think we just have to just call and just talk with each other, because the pandemic is affecting all of us in very different ways. And not a lot of people want to talk about it. And that's one thing I realized with my couples. Until I called them on the phone, they didn't open up to me and they didn't share with what was going on. And I think that does a lot for us right now.
Great. As we all know, communication is key at any time. So thank you so much for going through that. Last question that I have for you is, what are your recommendations for someone who, I'm trying to make this applicable to everyone, maybe the mother or father of the bride or groom unfortunately passed away. So there are some expectations, or at least some things that the mother and the father of the bride or groom are a part of. How would you suggest that the spouse of the said individual who is no longer with us, or the parents of the other,
side,
right, the
right.
bride on the opposite side, how would you suggest them handle that situation and support the
Mhm.
individual who has either the bride or groom who has lost that parent?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, COVID has affected us all in different ways. I know my parents have had health issues unrelated to COVID this year, and there has been that unforeseen thing that we do lose a family member because we've had to postpone or had to change, and that is going to be something that's going to weigh very heavily on the wedding day. So I think if you're the partner's parents that like okay, let's just say I'm the bride, and then we have my partner's the groom, and let's say that my parent passed away, and so now my groom's family is like, well, what should we do? I think just again, just kind of sitting down and going out to lunch or dinner, or just getting together and just saying, you guys are still technically hosting the wedding as the bride, as the bride's parents, but we know that there's this loss now on this side, so how can we step in and help? Do you need financial help in this day? Do you just need emotional help? Do you have someone that can fill in for that role? But again, just sitting down and saying that this isn't a traditional wedding now. There are different elements, and so now how can we help on that side? And then I think if it was like one of my parents that had passed and now I only have one with me, it would just be sitting down and having a heart to heart and figuring out how do we represent that parent that's no longer here? How do we fill in? Maybe you have them walk you down the aisle, and that's maybe non-traditional, but I think you just kind of need to remember what's important to you about your wedding day, and what you want it to feel like, even with that person not there. But then how can you fill that void and make it a happy and positive experience for everyone? And once again, just talking to each other is probably going to be the best way to figure out how you can share those new roles now.
All right, great. And last question we have for you. We have some students on the call. We have some alumni, some parents, a really good mixture of the Truro community. But
Oh,
what
great.
is your advice for someone who is looking to get into the business?
Yeah, so I think if you're someone that's looking to get into the wedding business, or I like to always say more the hospitality business, is kind of like what I did. I think that you have to try different positions within hospitality before you can just become a wedding coordinator, because I think it's really important for you to understand the different roles of what everyone does that day. What does a caterer do versus a photographer versus a venue manager? So I would probably dabble a little bit into different roles in hospitality, so you can kind of understand what they do. And then as far as being a wedding coordinator, I'm actually in the process of training a coordinator to become certified as an Inspire Your coordinator. And so I wrote down real quick the 4 things that I say that if you're going to get in this industry, this is what you have to be strong at, or learn at least skills that you have to develop. And one of them is being an effective communicator. Obviously, you have to communicate well with the wedding party, the couple, the vendors. And so in that respect, you have to be good at listening and being a proactive thinker. The worst thing for a coordinator to be is to deal with things as they happen. You really have to be proactive and prevent them from happening before they happen. And then another thing, you just have to be very respectful of the team that you're working with, and remember that you're not just showing in as the leader, as a wedding coordinator, but you're working with the team, and you just kind of respect all of their skill sets and what they have to offer. And that's why I encourage people to try different jobs in the hospitality industry, so you can gain that respect on a real authentic way. And then you have to be really organized and very detail oriented. When I first started at USD as an intern in one of the roles, I got critiqued for not being detailed. So I stopped that, and I became extremely detailed now as a business owner, and starting a wedding business. And then you just have to be knowledgeable. So I created a wedding product line that is actually called the Knowledge Box, where it breaks down all the different wedding options per wedding vendor. And so, by me going through and creating all that content, I became very knowledgeable. And now I hope that will help couples become more knowledgeable about all the different options for each wedding vendor, as well as people that are planners or in the industry, they can learn about it as well. So that's a product that I sell online and that I ship out to anyone. But you definitely just have to be knowledgeable, as you know, like in any job that you do, you got to know your stuff, and you have to love people, and you have to love being a part of their wedding day. And you know, knowing that you're kind of going to be playing a lot of different roles. Like this year, I played a lot more of a mentor and a counselor and a cheerleader than I necessarily expected. So, but I definitely enjoyed that. So.
Well, that's wonderful. That about wraps up our time. Amanda, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's always great seeing you.
Yes, it was very great to see everyone and be connected again in San Diego, and hopefully the information I provided is helpful. And like I say, if you have any other questions, feel free to DM me through Instagram. My Instagram account is Let You Inspire You, or you know, shoot me an email or anything. I'm here to be a resource, and I love to share what I know. So especially with the USD community.
Great.
Oh, and the
Thank you.
wedding today is a fellow USD alum as well. So it's going to be a USD Love Fest today and tomorrow.
Oh, we love that. Well, have a good time at the wedding. Enjoy. I hope it goes really well. And then, as you mentioned, to everyone on this call and who is watching at a later time, we will go ahead and include all of the information that Amanda listed, her Instagram, her email, in our follow-up email that we send, so you can connect with her if you haven't already done so and checked out her website during this chat. But also, if you would like to learn more about the Alumni Association, the Chicago Torero Club, or what programs there are to be involved with that we have through the Alumni Association, please feel free to email me as well. We would love to bring you into the fold, to have you, of course, participate in more events, but also learn more about what we do at the USD Alumni Association. So thanks again for everyone who logged in today, and anyone who is listening at a later time. We hope you have a great rest of your day. We hope you have a nice weekend, and take care.